When you show up as yourself, you will be a catalyst. You cannot help it. The more yourself you are, the more of a catalyst you will be, regardless of what you do. So if you are a coach and you show up as yourself, you will be a very catalytic coach. If you are a doctor, you will be a very catalytic doctor. If you are a teacher, you will be a very catalytic teacher. If you are a barber, you will be a very catalytic barber. If you are a mom, you'll be a very catalytic mom. A coaching is a profession. And it's a profession I happen to love. It's a profession I came into in 1993 after a couple of years of being a therapist because I thought I was supposed to be, and then a couple of years of not working with people because I thought I'd broken things by doing therapy wrong. So the story, some of you know the story, but the story, I'll do the short version. Again, I really did. I was an accidental therapist. It was like I was really into NLP and I really liked it. And it was at the time being taught as a therapy. So I became a therapist. And my sort of specialty, not because I chose it, but because I helped somebody and they told two friends, and that it was panic attacks. Like I just got really good at helping people with panic attacks. And I noticed that panic attacks seemed to usually work the same way. Is somebody had a really bad experience, a traumatic experience. And the second they started to feel those feelings again, they clamped down to prevent it from happening, and that would turn into the panic attack. And so once I kind of got how they worked, it wasn't all that hard to fuck with them until they didn't work anymore. Well, one day a woman came and she had panic attacks to the point where she would be considered and had been diagnosed agoraphobic. So she was afraid of leaving her home. And her boyfriend brought her to me on the floor of the back seat of his car under a pile of coats. That's what it took to get her to come. And we had, ironically, we had a really easy conversation. Like it was hell for her to get there, but when she was there, we clicked pretty quickly. And I was pretty comfortable with, so I remember what I used to do is before I would say anything, I would say, hey, what are the two stupidest words in the English language? And in her case, it was French fry and parka. And I was, okay, so I want you to tell me about what's been going on for you. But instead of using the phrase panic attack, I want you to use the word French fry. And instead of using the word, instead of going back to the original trauma, I want you to go back to the original parka. So I want you to tell me about all the French fries that you've had, how often you have them, what time of day you have them, and I want you to talk to me about your parka. So she did. And, in a relatively short space of time, she was laughing about it, and it seemed to make a difference in the room. While she was there, oh, no, this is what it was, right? Her parka was, said she was from a Pentecostal Christian church, very, very religious family. And she'd been on a bus in Brixton, where they lived. And she said, I had this experience. She immediately knew about the parka. She didn't have to go looking for it. She said, I remember my parka, right? And she said, I was on this bus. I was 15 years old. And I think she was 19 when I saw her. And she said, I was on the bus and I looked at this little girl. And it was like we became one. There was no boundary between us. And I looked at this old woman who was on the bus, and the same thing happened. And it was like I dissolved and they dissolved, and there was only one of us. And it said everywhere I looked, people were dissolving. And it was just like this one energy. And I'm thinking, oh, wow, she had a Satori experience. And she's describing it. And then she said, and that's when I knew Satan had entered my body. I was like, oh, I think I get what the problem is. Right? And all that I thought to do, all that occurred to me to do was I happened to have been reading a book at the point in time called What is Enlightenment by John White. And it was just a collection of people sharing enlightenment stories. And I said, read this. And she mentioned that her grandmother or grandfather, I don't remember, had been diagnosed with cancer. And I happened to have done a course in Christian healing because I did every course that I could. And I said, oh, here's the manual to this course in Christian healing. They might, and so I just gave her a couple of books. What we did in the room was enough that she could walk out without the coat over her head. So I felt like, okay, something good happened. But here's the thing. I was an actor, right? So I happened to get my first job the next day. And it started, like I had to go up to Manchester to go do this job on the Friday. And on the Thursday night, I got a call on my answering machine. Now, kids, answering machines, right? They used to, if you called somebody and they weren't there, a machine would pick up the message and then you'd press a button and it would play it back. So I get home and the answering machine, there's a message on the answering machine and goes, Michael, it's Esther, please call me, it's important. And I didn't. And I thought, okay, you are not allowed to be a therapist anymore. Like if you can't take responsibility, if you're going to just leave people, you should not do this. So I went, I did the show. I kept teaching because teaching didn't somehow seem like the same burden of care. Or it's probably not called burden of care, is it? That's what it felt like to me at the time. But the same duty of care, that's the word. But I think we can now see why I didn't like it. And then so that was 1991. In 1993, I got a call on my answering machine. And the voice said, hi, Michael, this is Esther. You probably don't remember me. And I'm thinking, oh, I remember you. But I was wondering if you'd be open to having lunch. Here's my number. And so I just thought, yes, this is my fault. I will eat shit, whatever. And so I called her and we made an arrangement to go up to have lunch up at a cafe in Stoke Newington. And I went in the next day or whatever day it was. And I walked into an intervention. It was her, it was the boyfriend, it was two people who I assumed were her parents, it was two people I assumed were her grandparents. And I'm like, but again, all right, whatever I get, I deserve. Well, she proceeded to tell me that 2 days after our session, she had this experience of just everything changing and all the fear was gone. She had a quantum leap, I would now call it. She had a transformative jump. She had a shift in consciousness. And she said, and I was so excited. I mean, you probably never got the message, but I was calling you because I wanted to tell you about it. And I'm thinking like, that was the message I dodged? Okay. And she said, and my boyfriend, well, now my fiance is here because he wanted to thank you. And my parents are here because they wanted to thank you. And my grandparents are here because that spiritual healing book, she cured her cancer. And I'm going, oh my God, you're why I retired. Right? But I also knew I didn't want to go back and do therapy because for me, and please, if you're a therapist, be a therapist. But for me, I didn't like making my living from people who were suffering. I was happy to help them, but I didn't like that being where my income came from. And so I kind of was a little stuck. And then I came across this field called coaching, where you took basically healthy people and helped them do more. And I thought, oh, I like that. I don't mind charging people for that. That sounds cool. And so I trained as a coach. Now, what a coach is for me has changed over the years, but some things haven't. Like to me, what a coach is it's somebody who brings out the best in people and helps the best get better. It's somebody who helps somebody get more out of themselves and their life than they can get by themselves. And it's generally done either at a level of performance to get better at a specific target or a specific performance at the level of at a sort of a higher level of an area of life. So you might coach somebody around their business. You might coach somebody around their relationship. You might coach somebody around health. You might coach somebody in an area, or just, big picture. That's ultimately what transformative coaching, which is what I did and do and teach when I teach coaching. And it's much more, there's more craft to it. And it's generally over a longer period of time. And if you are not awake to yourself, you will not be a terribly catalytic coach, that you can still be an effective coach. So if you have enough good techniques and skills, you can make a difference to people. But you're less likely to spark transformation. You're less likely to spark that genius coming into form. It can happen, but really that comes from resonance. That comes from presence. That comes from aliveness. And so that for me, so in other words, you can be catalytic. You can be a catalyst in any area of life. And coaching is a craft. It is a role. It is a profession, as is therapist, as is doctor, as is teacher, as is business person, as is athlete, as in anything.